I also am not a fan of that because that front line, not only is it a war metaphor, but it also creates this sense that these folks are not that important. We'll throw a ton of people, and if they get killed in battle, cool, we got more coming. And that's not an environment I want to work in. And I don't want to be that way as a human. I don't want to feel that way. So I actually stay away from that term. I think of customer service reps or agents as supportive partners. My goal when I'm working with a team and creating a support team and culture is I want every one of the people with whom we interact, customers, clients, suppliers, whomever, to feel like, wow, they had my back. So you can see the difference there. Someone who's shooting and fighting versus someone who's like, hey, I want to take care of this for you. So it's a very different mindset and point of view. And CS can be a really, really hard job because there is often that sense of battle. And it doesn't have to be. However, that is dependent on leadership and the culture we foster to help those folks feel like they have agency, like they are successful in helping the business succeed.
My name is Jochem van der Veer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called TheyDo, the journey management platform for business decision making. We raised over $50 million and are growing globally. Our enterprise customers include Ford, J&J, the Home Depot, and Pfizer. I mean, wherever you look, understanding customers is key to staying ahead. But in order to do this at scale, aligning so many different teams with the customer journey is incredibly hard, but it is possible. I really wish this podcast existed before we started our company because so many companies are organizing around journeys and there's so much to learn. So in order to share what I'm learning, what I'm hearing with our community, I meet with industry experts. And in my video podcast, I'm here to explore the world of business strategy, design, and journeys, customer journeys, to really get an understanding of how leaders are changing their way in their business. So let's dive into the show. So my guest today is Jen Burton. She is a CX coach at Zendesk, where she designs and implements human-centric, data-driven performance systems that save time and deliver exceptional results. So over 15 years of experience in customer support and operations, she is recognized as a leader in building scalable, high-quality support systems across chat, SMS, and voice channels. But her leadership blends AI with human touch, enabling teams to thrive independently while achieving customer and business success. Her dedication to enhancing the human experience also creates personal growth and meaningful connections, which we're going to dive into because wherever she goes, she always focuses on the importance of bringing humanity into leadership roles. Jen, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here and really excited. These are some of my favorite topics to discuss. So,
all right, so let's get into it. Bringing humanity into leadership roles. Big spicy topic. Let's make it small. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think what it means to me is that I am as human as everyone else. And I think quite often managers or leaders can have kind of a command and control outlook or style. And that ultimately dehumanizes everyone. And quite often dehumanizes peers as well, not just the folks that are on their team. And so it's really important to me to be able to say like, wow, I messed that up. Or, hey, I have some thoughts, challenge me, poke holes in this. And go from there so that we can partner together because I'm only as good as the people that I'm working with. And as a leader, it's truly my job to help those folks become successful. And deep humanity is really, I believe, one of the very foundational elements of a successful relationship.
Where do you think leaders fall short most often when trying to do this without any guidance or they believe it's important? What are some of the places that are obvious in hindsight where trying to bring humanity in but doing it in the wrong way actually is a big pitfall for them?
Yeah, I've certainly where I am today as a leader was over years and years and years of trial and error of great leadership, terrible micromanagement, frustration, all of that stuff. So some of the pitfalls I think folks see when they're like, hey, I want to be a human with my team, being inappropriate as far as looking for the team to support them or saying, sharing too much about the struggles that we are facing as leaders. It's not appropriate for me to go to one of my direct reports and say, I'm really struggling with my boss or with the CEO and they don't listen to me and I just feel, not important. That's not appropriate. That's something I could maybe go to a peer with, or, I like to have my work best friends, and share that with someone. And so that's because what that ends up doing is that those folks that are reporting to you lose confidence in you as a leader, but also lose confidence in the business, which has a pretty negative impact on engagement. Because then they start thinking, oh, the CEO is a real jerk. And that's not effective. It's not healthy. It creates these silos. And it does lend itself to an experience of us versus them. And in a well-functioning team that's part of a larger team and we go all the way up, we have to, it's not us against them. We have to be all one, driving towards the same goals, making that company successful using our expertise.
So you mentioned you can't do that with your direct reports, and it might be obvious, but some managers or some leaders have built great rapport with some of the people that have been in their teams for years sometimes. Yep. So it's easy to vent, it's easy to go there. And you said, no, you should go to your peers. But what if there's no one else that you trust or you think like, hey, I should be having this conversation with someone else? That CEO is a jerk and she's like nagging on me, like or what to do?
That's when I go to friends. I really, I'm not gonna sugarcoat. If the CEO truly is a jerk, I'm gonna listen to my folks who are sharing that, and then my goal is to be helping them look towards solution. And I've often found that for me, if I'm really struggling with someone, there are probably some behavior changes I can make to smooth that relationship out. I have no control over the jerks. I can only control what I'm contributing to the situation. And so it's really important to me to help folks learn that as well. And it's a skill. It's a skill about, how I move through the world and what I am choosing, how I'm choosing to perceive things. So, for example, I was at a company, we were acquired by a much larger, very traditional and bureaucratic company. And we were a fast moving, tight knit startup. And I had to learn how to play that game and I couldn't just go to the CEO if I wanted to chew on something. I couldn't even just go to the COO, who I ultimately was the leader of my umbrella. And so that's not how I want to work and what I prefer, but I had to learn how to have those conversations in a way that wouldn't ruffle feathers, because I found at a large bureaucratic company, ruffling feathers is not a good idea, which is one of the reasons why I love startups, because we ruffle all of our feathers.
It's an easy out maybe, but I want to click into some other thing that you said, and maybe I'll lead into with a quote I got. I think it was Jerry Colonna. I don't know if that name rings a bell, but he said something that strikes me to what you said on, like, let's first look at what I can do in this situation before I go to something else or blame someone else, if I'm paraphrasing you. And he said, or used the phrase a lot, how am I complicit in the situation I say I don't like?
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really powerful way to think about it. And is that right, that that's also the way that you think about always looking at yourself first before blaming and pointing fingers?
I mean, absolutely. Because what good does it do for me to blame or point fingers? Now, that doesn't mean as a leader and a peer, I'm not giving feedback and I'm not saying, hey, there's other options here. But when I'm in a situation, where it's blaming, I'm really missing out on opportunities I might have to improve myself. And ultimately, I want to grow, whether it's personally or professionally. I think about, the whole thought or phrase that we use in the States around choose your battles. I don't want to battle at work. I don't want to walk into a difficult relationship or a team that's had struggles and be ready to fight anyone, because I don't want anyone to fight with me. So what am I doing walking in there with that? And so if I can walk into a situation with curiosity, with patience, which is a skill I had to learn. I've not always been patient. And look for the opportunities and the insights available in that relationship, then my day is better, right? Ultimately, I want to have a good day at work. That helps me feel engaged. And battles just take it out of all of us. It's just not, for me, the kind of environment I want to contribute to.
Language seems important there as well. I mean, maybe it's a nice segue to customer support. We talk about the front line, right? And when you talk about battles, like that's an easy bridge to make. But language is important. So if we don't want to pick your battles, if we don't want to have a fight over this, how should we think about the front line in customer support?
I also am not a fan of that, because that front line, not only is it a war metaphor, but it also creates this sense of that these folks are not that important. You know, we'll throw a ton of people, and if they get killed in battle, cool, we got more coming. And that's not an environment I want to work in. And I don't want to be that way as a human. I don't want to feel that way. So I actually stay away from that term. I think as of customer service reps or agents, as, supportive partners. My goal when I'm working with a team and creating a support team and culture is I want every one of the people with whom we interact, customers, clients, suppliers, whomever, to feel like, wow, they had my back. So you can see the difference there. Someone who's shooting and fighting versus someone who's like, hey, I want to take care of this for you. I understand you're feeling some anxiety because what you believed we could do is not working out, right? So it's a very different mindset and point of view. And CS can be a really, really hard job because there is often that sense of battle. And it doesn't have to be. However, that is dependent on leadership and the culture we foster. To help those folks feel like they have agency, like they are successful in helping the business succeed.
Talk to me about creating that culture. Like what goes into creating it? Like you can't buy a culture. You have to build it carefully.
No.
How do you go about building a culture?
Yeah, I worked at a startup called Digit, and of over 20 years of experience, the culture at Digit was just my favorite and the most supportive and warmth and welcoming. However, you were expected to perform, right? You did get to, we weren't just hanging out. It was not a foosball company. And the leadership at Digit, the founder, Ethan Block, the chief people officer, Carolyn Sattenberg, they really hired deliberately. And it's one thing to be able to hire deliberately, very slow at leadership levels. But let's talk about customer service, right? We often have to bring in a cohort of 10 people or have to hire really quick. And so how do you do that when you're working with or evaluating someone who's also pretty early in their career? As a leader, what I want to bring and have my people managers, if there are sometimes it's just me. But if there are people managers, I want those people to be extremely warm, emotionally intelligent, curious, and able to communicate really, really well. And so that starts to create this culture of warmth, of safety. I had someone tell me that I made it okay for her to fail, which meant that it made it okay for her to try new things. And then when we get into like, how do we hire for a CS agent? I love talking to folks who came straight from retail or hospitality. I try not to require folks to have a tech, startup background, depending on role, because those folks have been under fire. And then I also look for things, when I'm interviewing people. Do they listen? Are they curious? Are they asking questions that show they've put some thought into our conversation? And do they have this sense of excitement and interest? I remember I don't know how many interviews I've done, but I'll never forget this one. I said, which I don't ask this question anymore because it's lame, but, why do you want to work for us? And he said, because I can live for free at my grandma's house. And I was like, that's not what I'm looking for. But I don't ask that question anymore because look, we're all looking for work so we can survive and pay our bills. We just want to have a great place to work is the goal.
So when people say, or when that person says, I wanna not live there anymore, how does that relate to warmth? Like, have you been more sophisticated in qualifying it? Because to be fair, like some people are really good interviewers and then they join the team and they fall short. Like, how fast do you know? Like, is the turnaround quickly, or you give them a chance? Like, how should we think about that?
I'll talk at two different levels. So I very much believe in this. I know this can sound harsh, but in hire slow, fire fast. However, in CS, we have to hire fast as well. And so fire fast, what does that mean? At the leadership level, maybe someone who is on an operations team or has more experience, I can tell pretty quick. Maybe it's that first deliverable. And I had someone where we hired her. We were so excited. And I got the first deliverable and I was like, wait a minute. This is not, this is indicating some fundamental issues here. It wasn't just that she didn't know the product. That had nothing to do with it. It was like a fundamental ability to organize information, which in the role she was in, I needed someone to be really great at that. And so, we didn't work together long. And, as a leader, a hiring manager, it's horrible to go through that experience. Not only because you brought someone in under wonderful pretenses, and then the relationship didn't work, right? That's a terrible experience as a human being. It's also expensive for the business, right? I mean, we invest so much time and money in interviewing, preparing, evaluating. All of that stuff is very expensive. So we get lost opportunity cost, right? On the agent side, it's much faster. So on a CS agent, tend to do a 30 or 60 day probationary period. You gotta be on time. You can't take time off. You've got to attend the training sessions, pass the training in whatever format we say, how many opportunities, whatever. And then we move on very quickly. And it seems cutthroat, and it kind of is. But it's the nature of support, since we are so intensely data driven, that we want to make sure that we are always on time. And I'm not saying that's specific to efficiency KPIs because that's another topic, but we want to just really make sure we're operating very cohesively together. And when I think about building a team, I want kind of 3 tiers of CS agents, right? I want the ones who have the skill. They're going to do a 9-to-5er. This is all they want. They're cool with this. Maybe they're an artist or, and they're literally here to do their 40 hours or whatever, pay the bills and go on. I'm cool with that. We need those folks. And then we have the folks in the middle who are like potentials, right? They're showing interest maybe in other departments in the business. Maybe they want to go into product. Maybe they want to go into operations. And so you can really work with them. They have the will to grow. And that should be a pretty good chunk. And then the smaller chunk at the top are the folks who are already there, right? They're your culture leaders. They're your go-tos. And they may be moving into a people management role, or they may be moving into like a principal role or a high level IC. And so that's how I want to build the team. And so we got to make sure we're not having folks who are mediocre at any level.
How are you thinking about the ratios between them? Is there a golden formula that works across all these businesses, or is it really situational dependent?
It's definitely more situational, depending maybe on the product or the stage of the business. So for example, startups can often be very complex, right? Because we haven't hammered things out and things are moving very quickly. And we're going out with MVPs, and things change a lot. And so I want a smaller, higher functioning org there, right? We don't need a massive team, but we need folks who are able to really go for it, who are able to pivot and change. Like the place I'm supporting right now is a fractional. We just did a week ago a major pivot in customer experience and support. And so we've got to go out and say, okay, this is changing everything. And here we go. Off we go. So I need adventurous people, high skilled adventurous people. In a larger organization, 40 or more people, I think about it, and it's hard to say a golden formula because everything in my world needs to be adjustable. But if I think about it, and maybe that 10%, the bottom 10% are the skill folks, right? They're good. We don't have to worry about them. They learned what they needed to do for their role and off they go. And then I want maybe a 60, 70% of those high potential folks. And then everyone else, leadership. And that's dreamy and not always possible. But that's a goal for me.
And if we think back on culture, so interviewing for warmth and potentially hospitality background, for instance, then we have these tiers. So we're very intentional about what we're hiring for, what kind of person we're looking for. And then obviously there's the efficiency metrics, which we put a pin in and maybe come back to that. You have your cultural leaders, but is that really it? Is that the recipe for building a great culture? What more is there?
Oh, that's a really good question. It's foundational to building a great culture. And the rest of things that come into building an engaging culture where people feel important and that they can be successful is things like training and access. If I have a team who's not performing, or let's say individual, if individual is not performing, some of the things I'm going to look for, is this a skill issue? If it's a skill issue, I need to provide them more support and help them learn, right? Maybe it's more documentation. Maybe it's one-on-one sessions. If it's a will issue, then that's a different challenge, right? And so what I found though is that quite often when I see will issues with higher performers, they're feeling overwhelmed, or maybe they're having imposter syndrome and they're scared and they just need a little bear hug, right? To say, or more information. Maybe I wasn't clear in the direction. So training and that environment is really key. And also, I think I mentioned earlier, this notion of silos, of us versus them, that will destroy a culture, whether it's inside a team or, goes out across teams. And so whenever I hear folks start to think in terms of us and them, or speak in terms, and I certainly have gone there myself, believe me, it can be really juicy feeling to feel superior. So when that starts happening, I really want to jump in and get in there quick, because if one person starts to spiral out, they're going to catch others in that tornado. And then that just gets more and more difficult to address and solve for. So I try to get on top of that stuff right away.
So let's bring it one level up. So we have the CS org, but we have a mutual responsibility to deliver a great customer experience. But it also means collaborating with our peers in product, with our peers in marketing, sales, across the business. So there are so many more parts of the silos that we need to align. I always like to think like customer experience is this holistic view of the business where everything plays together. But in many organizations, CX is just a better name for CS, customer support. You've been building customer experience operations systems for what? More than a decade, 2 decades? I don't know what the time frame should be.
Almost 2 decades, and probably 2 decades. Yeah.
Right. So let's consider you the expert.
One of them.
Where do you see the difference between what a great CX operation looks like versus one that has all the ingredients, but is not working?
Yeah. Okay. So in the context of cross-functional relationships, as a leader, I've learned over the years how to talk with other teams. And again, it kind of goes back into that mindset of like, I'm here as a partner. I'm not here to fight for what's right. Ultimately, what's right is what's right for the business. And, we hear, the whole like disagree and commit philosophy. And I find that to be very effective for myself. And that then allows me to go back to my team and say, okay, this is the direction we're going in. And here's marketing's point of view and here's product. So that's one way to make sure that I'm not fostering an environment of like, oh God, sales did this thing again. Right. Like the worst, right? Sales went out and sold something that doesn't exist. So the response there is like, okay, what's real? All right. Well, we've got this client who has been promised this. And so how can we adjust? And it's not about me giving up myself. I think folks can often cave, and that is also not where we want to go because it leads to burnout. So I will go into a meeting or a strategy discussion armed with some things. Oh, I said armed, right? More war.
It's so hard to not use the war analogies,
isn't it?
right?
Isn't
it's
it?
Tough.
Maybe that's my goal. That's a goal for 2025. Let's eliminate war from business. But I can go into a discussion, a meeting, and have data. So some teams, if I want to go to the CFO, I better have an ROI in mind. I better be ready to go, right? If I want to go to product or engineering and say, there's this bug, I need to know the scale and the scope of that bug. And I need to say to them, 13% of our contacts today have been around this. And then it's like, oh, that's a bigger deal than like, oh, this one customer had this thing fail and they don't like it and I'm stressed out about it. That's not something I can justify asking engineering to work on. And I found in CS, and specific to that, when we go into eng or product and be like banging the drum, like we've got to fix this without a sense of overall product development lifecycle and business needs in mind, we just become annoying. We're like mosquitoes. And engineers and product managers are like, just chill out. You don't know what the COO is asking me to do, or my chief product officer told me I have to deliver. And that's more important. You don't know that. If we go in with, here's the data, here's the story, then we can have a conversation cross-functionally and make those decisions. Sometimes it is like, oh yeah, this is going to have to be prioritized above feature development for X. And more often though, more likely is like, yeah, we'll get that on the roadmap. This organization I'm working with right now, I had this idea and it's a very small team. It's 10 people. And the main engineer said, is this nice to have or requirement? And I was like, it's nice to have. Put it on the backlog. So we have to come in with that business sense. And as a leader, one of the things I get to help people understand is how business works, is what product development lifecycle looks like in startups especially. And it helps, I think, in many respects, soothe folks, and then they can start to elevate their communication style and their skills and research skills and presentation skills.
What do CX leaders need to get from the business to get that sense of what is important to the COO's office or to other parts of the organization? Like it doesn't come on a golden platter too. No. Like sometimes you have to drag it out and understand it. Like what do CX leaders need from the business?
I think there needs to be trust, and it doesn't mean golden ticket, right? Especially the startup. Like I could walk into a startup and be like, I need these 4 tools and this many people, and then we'll be successful. And that's just not reality, right? We have to be cost conscious in startups, and we have to be working very leanly. And so I think there needs to be trust from the C-suite down. And if there's not, as a leader, my job is to build those relationships. And sometimes it requires great relationship skills. Sometimes it's an instant connection and let's go. But I really need to know how to go in and connect with the decision makers. That way I can have influence, but I may not get what I want, but that's okay. That's okay, because ultimately we have to build a business together. And if it comes down to like worst case scenario, which no one wants to be in that, where the leadership just says, nope, customer experience is bottom of the barrel. We're going to pay you the least, which they generally do, but we're not going to give you any resources. Go figure it out. Then that's just not a place I want to work. And so hopefully I would be able to move on from that. I get to choose where I work as much as people choose to work with me. And that's been a really important result of my decades worth of experience.
So what do you do when a business thinks about customer experience as like the bottom of the barrel?
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't join them, but let's say there is a part of the business that believes customer experience is the most important thing.
Yep.
There is some room for improvement. Like, how do you go about proving, for lack of a better term, that improving the customer experience, not just by better support, but in general, signaling the things that people have frustration about and putting items on the roadmap that were deprioritized, but because you get all the stuff on your plate, it becomes a priority for them. Like, how do you go about proving that CX is worthy and that we should actually consider it as one of the key drivers for business?
You bet. So
business success.
It's not enough for me to go, I really think this is the way to do it. It's not enough. So that's where research comes in. And, today in 2025, we have access to tons of data. I just think of there's so many great studies going on and a lot of benchmarking. Zendesk has incredible benchmarking available across multiple industries. Forrester, if you can get in on some of those reports, are really valuable. And so I will go in and say, okay, if we lose customers at this point, it's costing the business this much. If customers aren't hearing back within X number of hours, they're more likely to churn or to lose their brand loyalty. If that's information I think can really help inform business decisions. So I'll put together, depending on the organization, whether they're slide deck team or a document team, I'll put together that report or business case really to make the changes that I think, or get things on the roadmap or prioritize higher on the roadmap that I think will make a really strong impact on customer experience. It doesn't take much to lose a customer. It really doesn't. It takes a lot more behind the scenes work that I hope a customer never sees to keep that customer and to have them think of us first when they're trying to solve whatever problem or buy whatever product.
So one of the stats from, let's use Forrester on one of their recent VOC reports is 60% of CX initiatives fail. and the reason is, paraphrasing here, because they are not basically linked to any business impact.
Right.
So
yes.
Where does this go wrong? Like, you make it sound very logical. There needs to be a business case for tying it to the work streams that are already happening. So yeah, like, let's prioritize. And yet most of these initiatives fail, or more than half of them fail.
Yeah. I think part of what I see is chasing trends in customer experience is, we'll just talk about AI right now, right? Like, we can't avoid it. And there's this promise and this dream that you can replace 90% of your CS agents with an AI chatbot or, and it's like, no, you actually can't, right? AI is only as good as the people who are implementing it. You need humans for that. And so chasing trends like that, you'll get, I've worked with execs who are like, oh, I met this person at this conference and they said that this software is going to do X, Y, and Z. And like you said, it may not attach to a business goal, if the software is going to achieve a 70% reduction in headcount, I have to go back to the business and say, are we really looking to save money that way and do a 70% reduction? And then I can go down and say, okay, this is what we're seeing the impact of this. It's going to affect SLAs. It's going to affect qualities. And so it is about like patience and research. It's exciting to hear about these sexy tools and software and methodologies and team organization structures. And we've got to look past the allure of them and do tie them back, whether you're an OKR company or, some other prioritization style business. You've got to tie them back to business goals and be patient and assure those execs that it's relationship, right? Oh, I love this idea. It's super cool. However, is this more important than that? Just as a product manager would come back to me and say that, I need to be able to say that to leaders who are just like, let's chase this initiative.
If you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave a review. It makes all the difference. The Experience Edge podcast is where I interview business leaders, CX pioneers, and the best designers who share their insight on creating business impact, having an edge on the customer experience. If you want more exclusive content and behind-the-scenes access, check out the Experience Edge podcast on YouTube and LinkedIn so you don't miss a thing. Now let's get back to the conversation. So you're actually saying things like what you see the headlines in the news, right? Klarna cutting 70% of their support force because AI now takes over. Like they're taking it to the extremes. But You think that's BS?
Ooh, BS is a very strong statement. I don't trust it as far as quality and experience. Human beings don't operate in bits and bytes. And I know AI and LLM and Gen AI are mind-blowing of what's the possibilities. But when I'm dealing with a human being who gets past, maybe I need to cancel my order or schedule a return or, what's my last 5 transactions, right? That's all database stuff. That's bits and bytes. Let's serve it up to them using a chatbot or other type of tool. But when we start to deal with anxiety and fear, so for example, Digit was a fintech, right? We were helping people save money. Our goal was to have everyone have $2,500 in a rainy day fund, because in the US, more than 70% of the people in the US don't have that, right? And so we're dealing with folks who may be gig workers. They may need to withdraw money to get a new tire for their car. And so when we're dealing with that level of anxiety and fear around money and how do I feed my kids tonight? Oh my God, my wedding's in 2 weeks. I need to get this money. I need a human being to connect with that person. We struggle in digital CS to make eye contact, right? But I want that person to feel cared for. It's really hard to do that with an AI. Like I said, let's get AI to take care of those kind of FAQ level 101 database experiences for folks. And if I'm dealing with, a shopper whose Christmas presents are late, it's often not enough to just say to someone via an AI or a macro, here's your tracking order, click on it, and best of luck to you. That causes people don't feel heard and they don't feel like their problems matter. And with a customer, the only problem that matters is theirs. They don't know and care and shouldn't that we may be dealing with thousands of these on a given day. What matters to them is their experience. And so that has to matter to me.
Right. I love that example of breaking it down into what is bits and bytes versus where we do need human touch. I had Ain Shisti on the show the other day, and he is working at a company called Affinity. I don't know if you know them, but what they do is fascinating. What they are doing is they say, look, we know the person on the front line. We know the agents, but we know the agents really well. So when a call comes in, our solution actually routes the call to the person that is best suited to help this customer. And then we can turn that into dollars because we basically also, upsell and cross-sell during the calls. But I thought that was a way more compelling use case for AI is enhancing the experience. So I'm really curious, in your work, where do you see the actual impact of it other than just cutting headcount because we need to just optimize cost?
Yeah, I love AI in that way, right? As an operational support system. And we think about that, like using AI to route stuff. Let's go back 15 years to IVRs, and they're still in use today. Is this a billing question? Boom, I push 6, I go to the billing department. That's essentially it, and then I'm talking with someone who's specially trained. And I think about this sort of operational assisted AI around sentiment analysis even. So yes, we can set up a flow that says, oh, I identify this person's phone number or email address as a VIP, right? Maybe we have tiered support and premier support. And then I can identify it that way, right? That's a pretty foundational, easy thing to do that exists today. With AI though, and some of the cool stuff is sentiment analysis. So if someone's coming in hot, and then I can say, okay, let's get this person over to maybe a higher tier. Maybe they go to tier 2 to start. And so they're not going to the tier 1 agents, even if it's just a password reset issue, but they're coming in hot. And AI is great for that, for sentiment analysis. Other things that AI is really great for operationally is helping identify trends. I don't know how many leaders out here relate to like keeping that Zendesk queue open and occasionally scrolling through to see if there are any trends, or maybe there's a new product release and we're all focused on it. Like, how many contacts are we getting? There's tools out there like Birdie AI can really go out and help identify those trends and then surface those trends to the right people. That is super efficient as a leader. That gets me out of the queue. I can work on strategy stuff or coaching or whatever. And then get notified via Slack or some other way, like, oh, take a look, this thing's happening. And we also see the really cool stuff around assistive AI. So, hey, these agents are writing custom responses that all carry these themes. Do you want to write a macro for this? Or we're getting a lot of questions about this and there's not a knowledge base article for it. Why don't you write a knowledge base article for it? And here's some suggested language to start. That's also super helpful. So I am definitely more interested today in that operational AI than I am getting AI out to customers, unless it's that database stuff. Unless I can say, okay, chatbot, go and generate a document for this person based on their account history. Great. Love it. I don't need a human being to do that. So that's where I think about AI the most.
So in terms of operations, how are we thinking about metrics, efficiency metrics? Then, if we can touch the subject while we're at it, there's obviously like the usual suspects, like call resolution time and the time on call, all those like basics. But what are some of the metrics that over the course of your career are non-obvious CX metrics that actually are needle movers or are essential to have and tie your team's goals to or keep an eye on as a leader? Like, what are some of the non-obvious metrics that are important to you that people should take into account?
One that's important to me is think about it in terms of second response time, right? We all know we've got to do first response time. We want to hit our industry SLAs and benchmark, blah, blah, blah. But when I think of second response time, what I'm thinking about is, one, our first response didn't answer the customer's question. So that's a failure on our part, right? Or maybe we asked them to send us documents or more information. That person has invested the time to continue to do this and to follow this conversation. So I need them to know we're invested in their success. And I see a lot of, and I'll just stay in the world of Zendesk with their statuses, but these are pretty common. Like, I see a lot of tickets sitting in the open status. And what that means to me is that customer's waiting for another response, and they care enough about working with us that they want to solve this problem. So I look at that as a metric. I don't see a lot of folks always looking at that because, like you said, it's handle time, first contact resolution, first response time. Those are the hot ones, but those are almost the easiest to fail around too and solve for, right? You've got great macros. Folks have a script on the phone. They're really, they don't take into account, again, this human nature and this commitment. If a customer contacts me, they care about it. And maybe they only care because they subscribed. Well, guess what? Their money is valuable. Their experience with our business is going to make the difference with lifetime value. whether they churn, whether they complain about us, whether word of mouth gets out, that those are all really important things. I want every customer to feel valued and important.
So talk about sentiment analysis.
Mhm.
How do you measure sentiment? Because if you
Mhm.
just run it on top of your entire support system, you get like pretty generic answers. Like,
Yeah.
how do you break that down? And I'm specifically interested in the work that we are doing is bringing that to journey, so we understand the actual whole customer journey. Customers like where the sentiment is coming from have experienced it, so we're analyzing the emotional context. Talk to me about how you use sentiment analysis in your operations or bringing opportunities to the business.
Yeah, for sure. So it requires a lot of tuning. I don't know if you remember back in the day, there used to be like blacklisted words. And when I was at Fandom leading community over there, we would try to do that. But we all know you can get around a blacklisted word in a heartbeat. And so what do we do? So we have to be evaluating, especially early on in the after launch of the sentiment tool. It takes people who really know the customers that we're dealing with and our products very well. So you go in and tune. So for example, if the phrase is, I should not have to do this, that's a concerning sentiment to me. That's very concerning. So I want to make sure phrases like that are getting flagged. And then it's an ongoing analysis. So 3 months later, we're like, oh, this is really not that big of a deal. We're going to pull this. We're going to drop this in priority. So that's one of the things. It's like I said earlier, AI tools are only as good as the humans implementing them. And at a marketplace where, for example, where I'm right now at Flagship, my negative sentiment is going to be different than the negative sentiment at Fandom or at Digit. So we need to really make sure we're experts on our customers. We have to understand who our customers are. Flagship is a very digital first customer base. These folks are all on their phones. They're on Instagram. So the language they use may be different and signal different levels of urgency and frustration than language at Fandom, which is all user generated content.
So did I hear it right? That you keep like a stack rank list of all your opportunities and then continuously like evaluating these, or is there like a certain rhythm to doing it?
I think there needs to be a rhythm to it. I'm one of those people who can happily spend 4 days a week just looking at numbers and data and coming up with big ideas, and certainly a really key part of my function and role. However, I don't have 32 hours a week to do that. So it needs to be on cadence. And then as we build out operations teams, that becomes someone's job. That becomes someone's job to be managing and measuring the success of our tech stack and making sure that it's being optimized to the best of our ability. So it does need to be a cadence. Sentiment analysis, it's not helpful to look at it every day. It's the trends are too important and valuable. Certainly sentiment analysis post-release is really important and want to be really keeping an eye on it and tuning to the best of our ability for the weeks, maybe a week or weeks following, depending on the release, a future release.
Right. So you mean the product releases a feature and then you're tracking all the calls, the chats, the emails, the whatever comes in on specific sentiment around the feature.
And not only, and sentiment, and then, I guess we put that in a sentiment. Like you took something away, I miss it. This thing is cool, but it's not working. So sentiment doesn't have to always be about like upset customers. There are plenty of tools that can help us understand these trends using LLM for about evaluation.
Where do the traditional CX metrics like NPS and CSAT belong?
Yeah. Oh, this is a good one. So CSAT is a support performance measurement, and it's not clear and obvious to customers. Like, why should all they know is their experience. Maybe they didn't like a policy, or maybe the product was bad. And so they're going to rate that in the CSAT, Sam might have done an amazing job and if not saved the customer, really took care of things well, but they still get a negative CSAT rating because the customer's product, it was out of return policy or whatever, right? It's really hard. And there are great tools out there that help leaders and managers cruise through some of that. And we look at averages, and then we can look for the lowest and maybe cut those out and cut the highest out to get a sense of both agent and team performance. NPS is, in many respects, you could do an NPS on the product, the business, the service. Maybe you do that quarterly. NPS for support, you see things like Stella, who are kind of blending NPS and CSAT by providing a range, right? Would you rate this 1 to 5? And then we set our definitions. Is 3 poor and 4 and 5 are adequate and great? So it's sort of a blended NPS, right? We're not going to ask, like, would you recommend talking to Jen's customer service team again? Like, I don't want people to have to come to us. I want our product and service to work really well, and not generate contacts. So that's not really a meaningful question. So that's what I like about these the ranges of ratings. And like one of the cool things about Stella is that the end user, the customer can say, yeah, Matt was really on top of it today. He was clear. He was concise. Or like, hey, this person really dropped the ball and I had a bad experience. So that also gives a little more color akin to those open text fields in NPS surveys.
Do we see a drop in responses in general around these like survey-based after support interactions?
Oh, yeah. My experience is that we'd be lucky to get 14% response rate on those, and that's a victory. And so it can be kind of difficult, right? If I'm like, I want to hear everything, and a customer, they don't have time, they don't care. Or maybe, they had a bad experience. They don't want that person to get in trouble. Or maybe so response rates are low. However, I do think they're still actionable. And if it's a very low volume organization, and a CSAT average might not be helpful, but that's where QA comes in and performance management comes in.
So performance management on the agent side of things.
Yeah.
Do you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So do you break down CSAT all the way back to every individual agent and compare that? Is that literally what you're doing, or?
It depends on the size of the team. I joined a company several years ago that had a very small team, and their actual CSAT was terrible. And so when I joined, I started researching what's going on. And as I dug into the agent performance and responses, I was like, oh, this is coaching, right? And so it was a small enough team, right? It was 5 or 6 people. So in the beginning, and I couldn't maintain this for long, but in the beginning, I sat with every agent once a week and I went over a selection of tickets, both great work and others, here's opportunities for you. The team just hadn't had coaching or training. So it wasn't really their fault that performance looked bad on CSAT. It was just they needed support and training. As the company grows, you may have, a QA person, right? Who's out there working and doing the same way. But there's some really great AI out there right now that is offering automated QA. And again, it's only as good as the definitions you give it. But it is really helpful because then there's 100% of the emails, for example, are going to be rated against the rubric you design and define. And that is a much more realistic picture because, there's tools out there to be like, okay, give me a random sample of 15 tickets. Well, if that person did 250 tickets in a week, we may not get a good picture. One thing you can do though is on a tool like Stella, you can review those tickets. Maybe you look at the lower rating tickets and then you celebrate the higher rating tickets and show examples of that good work. So there's lots of ways to do QA now that didn't exist 5 years ago.
But shouldn't we see with AI actually like every ticket, every call interaction, every chat log, like everything is fair game now? Isn't it more like why sample when you can just analyze everything?
Exactly. I want to get away from sampling. I want to use AI to go in and say, I did 100% of Jamie's tickets. And Jamie actually scored a 98% on QA. So right on, or so-and-so had an auto fail. Bummer. how can I help them be successful next time around using that data?
So where is this going? Where are we over in the next 5 years? Because in the last 2 decades, I assume you've seen some changes and it's exciting. And, maybe like mobile was the biggest shift that you've witnessed.
Yeah.
Now there's this big thing coming again. Where is this going?
Well, I think we're going to be much more efficient. And when I think about, I hope that we're not in a situation like with the folks who are like, I replaced 70% of my agents. I think it's really important to remember when we're as an agent or a person in support who's afraid and that AI is going to take my job. As a leader, and what I need to be doing is looking for ways I can promote those folks or help upskill them outside of those bits and bytes CS interactions. There are incredible people out there who start as a CS agent and it's like, oh, wait a minute. You've got some solid technical chops here. I want to move you to technical support. Or, hey, you want to be an engineer. Maybe you're going to start out here as a support engineer. Got those folks with incredible operations minds. Let's get over and help you set this team up, get you to help set this team up for success. I love moving people over to product. Support agents and folks in support are experts on product experience and have a lot of great ideas. So if they've got the rest of the chops to be an entry-level product manager, get them over to product. Rather than creating this world where CS is a dead-end job, and it should never be, and it doesn't have to be. And that's not to say success in CS means that you're a people manager, because not everyone's a manager, and they shouldn't be, and that's no shade. That just means you're a great individual contributor, and you're a leader too. So I want to work on all of those skills to help folks. And AI is replacing some jobs. It's going to. However, I don't think it's going to replace customer support even at 90%. I know last year at Relate, Zendesk said they have a goal of 80%, and they admit we're nowhere near it, right? And I think that is going to be a long haul to get to 80% with quality. I have to preface that with quality. You could do it today and lose customers.
Right. I want to shift gears to using the customer journey in your operations and aligning the different teams or the different work streams. How are you thinking about using the notion of a customer journey in your work, and how are you actually implementing that?
Yeah, so I love the opportunity to work with user experience and product, bringing my knowledge, not only lifetime or 20 years of knowledge and experience in how customers interact with and engage, but also data I have from voice of customer research, and partner with user experience and product to say, maybe like, hey, if we do this here, that customer, it's going to be a confusing experience, or we're seeing a lot of drop off here. Or we're seeing a lot of inbound customer questions coming in from this particular path, or this page on the app, or this screen on the app. So I want to partner with them. They've got incredible creative minds. I come in with a certain amount of creativity, but a whole lot of experience. And how can we work together to make that journey as seamless as possible? I don't want customers to have to contact us, right? And we'll never get there 100%. But my goal and my desire is that customers or clients or whomever, they don't even have to think about us, right? Their order is delivered on time. The software, the dashboards that the software promises work really well and look great, and are simple. And so I like to work with product and user experience. I think they're very important partners. I have info they need. They have info I need. And it's also really important too to have a great understanding of what's going on, because I've certainly had experiences where customer service finds out about a change from a customer. And so I need to have really good working relationships cross-functional with those groups as well, so I can prep my team to be ready to support our customers at whatever stage they're in.
Yeah, I like that. And that's also what I'm seeing, right? This notion of the journey is like the most um, leveled playing field, if you will. Is that a game? War
We can
analogy?
go with
It's more
games.
like a
I
game.
mean, I know people
Game
might have
analogy, right?
sports
That's good.
metaphors issues, but we got to do something.
But it's leveling the playing field, right?
Yeah.
The product teams have their roadmaps, and maybe like they also have some discovery work they've done. But you've done research, you have the data, so
Mhm.
the journey is the one thing that connects us, and we
Yep.
can all speak the same language. So,
Yep.
my question to you is: who owns the journey? Should it be coming from CS or CX? Should it come from product?
Uh,
Is it like some there, some here? Like, how do you think about who owns the
oh,
journey?
I dislike ownership. I really do. I think it is product with partnership in my ideal world with partnerships. So when I build out a support operations team, right, and their charter is to make the support team successful, I like to have them embedded with product. And if we're big enough and complex enough, there might be swim lanes and I might have a couple support ops folks. Someone's over there on account management with that team. So they're engaged. They're going to stand-ups. They may or not always participate and contribute to stand-ups, but they know what's going on. And then when it comes down to how are we going to participate here, it's really important for those relationships to exist. Now, the place I'm at now, we're really small. So that's me. It's great. I love it. We'll get there. We're going to grow and expand and I won't need to do that anymore. But so I like the sense of really tight partnership. I think about it in terms of we have to almost be best friends with product. And companies can't be successful if all teams aren't working together and firing all in one. And I think success is bigger than revenue. It's longevity. It's employee happiness and engagement. It's, are people excited to go to work in the morning and then also know they get to go home and shut down? That's great. And so we need these partnerships and these relationships to be successful as a business.
I love that. And while we're at journeys, I want to ask you about the 4 journeys in your life. The first one, the last one, the best one, and the worst one. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What is the first one?
For customer experience?
You've been experiencing, you've been creating, like first journey in your life.
Oh, first journey in my life. Well, I have to go back to my days as a very competitive soccer player. I was the youngest person on the Washington State Olympic development team back in my day. And I'm not going to tell you how long ago that was, as a goalkeeper. And I played through college and semi-pro after. And one thing that I believe wholeheartedly that my experience being a part of teams who win and who lose and who have hard coaches and, has really given me the foundation for my career in leadership today. And I'm not saying that's the only way you get there. However, there's one thing that I go back to over and over again. And it's really helped me get past this sense of like, oh, something went wrong, so I'm a failure. We were in Washington State. I think we were playing Idaho. It was like the regional tournament to see who gets to go to nationals. And I was young. I was a goalkeeper and I flubbed it. And we got scored on and it was my fault, technically. And I went to the coach. I was like, oh, I feel so terrible. I'm a horrible person. I ruined it for everyone. And he goes, if there were no mistakes in soccer, it'd be a really boring game. And related to that, I get into college and I had a coach who said, look, Jen, some goals are your fault. Most of them are going to be, be out of your control. Maybe the defense failed. We don't know what's going on. And so that also helped me come to an understanding and learn how to have insight of like, oh, was this in my control or is this just sort of something that was a failure elsewhere and we can work to improve?
I love that. Real life journey. What about the worst one?
I don't want to get too personal here. I'll talk about the worst journey. Everything in my life is an opportunity. So I have done better sometimes than others handling problems and these journeys that maybe seemed like a failure, but really what is the opportunity here for me to learn from? Job searches, for example, in periods of unemployment. That job you're hot for, it's perfect for me. I know that I'm a shoo-in. and I don't get it. So that can feel like a failure on my part, right? And the reality of and the opportunity for insight for me is to look back and say, did I even really want to work at that place? Did that place meet my desired elements for a workplace? Um, don't get approved to move forward at a big company. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I don't want to work at a big company. That's not me, So, and then also just the reality that I'm not everything to everyone. And these go across all experiences in life, right? So specific to job search, we all know we have the job descriptions and there's the 7 bullet points and you go in and, oh, this is perfect. Well, hiring managers have a whole lot of stuff in their head. I do, that someone is subjective maybe, and that I have no idea. I can't speak to that because I don't know that that's a requirement. So that's a tough journey. It's been a really tough journey to learn. It was painful. And now I'm just like, my goal in life is to remain unbothered. And I can remain unbothered when I'm not attached to outcomes, whether that be personal, whether that be like my big idea, making it past approval at the corporate level and having the impact I swear it's going to have. I have to let go of attachment to those results. And know that I put my best foot forward, show up and show out. I do my best at that time and I let go of the results. It's painful to learn that.
What about the best journey then? Was this
That's the same one.
Right.
It's the same one. It's the coming out the other side, right? It's that it finally took me a long time in my life to learn that mistakes aren't failures. Certainly not a moral failure, that my self-worth is not my job title. When I can start moving into a world of knowing and trusting who I am and what I bring to the table, again, personal relationships, family relationships, corporate or work relationships, then I can trust that I'm there for the right reason. I'm doing the best I can. And then comes time for that learning and that insight. Is this the right place for me? Do I really want to be here? Do I want to be hanging out with these folks who are negative or, those sorts of things? And so, yeah, it's best and the worst, right? That's the beauty of those things, is learning from struggles.
Beauty. So instead of asking you about your last journey, I'll ask about the journey you are on right now. Because if we talk about life journeys, then I guess the only last journey is the one you're in right now. You want to share anything particular about the one you're in right now?
Well, I mentioned unbothered, right? And it doesn't mean I'm cruising through life, because if I'm cruising, I'm going downhill. But I want to live a life such that I trust myself to make good decisions. I trust myself to see opportunity and possibility, even in things that aren't going my way. And that helps me keep a really even keel, because when I am attached to an outcome that I have no control over, then that outcome can really impact how I am moving through my day, which then is a cascading effect. We've all had those horrible days at the office, then we take that home and, we have that horrible thing at home and we take it to the office. And it's not about like not being myself and like siloing or having, blocks, because I still bring myself to work. I bring myself home every day. But what it is for me is this goal I have to be unbothered, to move through the world in such a way where it's like, yeah, I'm good. It's not that I'm going to be okay. It's that actually right now I'm okay. It may not look like I want it to look, right? Like this may not be going the way I think it should be going, but if I step way back, I'm actually okay right now. And I have opportunities and possibilities for me to adjust and to look for something new or find new insight to help me move forward so that I can remain unbothered.
That is
like if I had a vision board for this year, if I was a vision board person, it would be blank. It'd be blank. I want to have this open field. Maybe it's a field, a meadow. I want a green field in front of me without my own limitations on it.
I love that. I think that's such a counterintuitive thing to have, right? A vision board that has nothing on it. So I think a lot of people who are listening to this will go, How does that apply to me? Maybe Jen knows something there. Jen, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. Yeah. If people want to know about your life journey is maybe one thing, but scaling, building, setting up customer experience operations and thinking that through what goes into it, like what's the best place to find you and learn more about how you do it?
You can hit my website, jenburton.me, JenBurton. I'm a 1N person. Hit my website. There's contact form. There's a little more about me. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect and talk about ways I can help or even, talk through some of your challenges right now.
All right. Well, I'll put links in the show note. And thanks again for joining me today, Jen.
Thank you so much. I had a pleasure.
All right. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this valuable today, don't forget to subscribe to The Experience Edge on your favorite podcast channel, leave a review, and share it with your team. I'd be delighted. Today's episode was brought to you by Daydo, the AI journey management solution for enterprise. To have an edge on your business strategy and to know why your customers do what they do, visit daydo.com and explore more resources to accelerate your customer experience game. And remember, the journey to creating customer-centric impact never ends, and here's always a new edge to discover in doing things differently. Next week, new episode. Until then, keep pushing the edge and stay inspired. See you in the next episode.